This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, party time! Woo!
Hello, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that acts on your brain a lot like a writer in the 1980s thinks alcohol would affect you. I am Gepwin, and I'm joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Dr. Izix.
Hi!
And I don't know why. You know what? Okay, sorry. I'm going to introduce what we're talking about in a second.
Yes.
But this is technically the third, but mostly the second episode of Star Trek Next Generation, because you had the two-parter pilot.
Mm-hmm. So part three of their adventures, effectively.
And you had the same, also second episode, possibly third episode, because of the pilot situation of the original series. Yep. And they used basically the same plot. Everyone knows this. I feel like...
Copy-paste.
I feel like if they were going to do this, they were going to do this for original series, and they were going to do this for Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
It should have just been tradition at that point. It should have been the second episode of DS9. It should have been the second episode of Voyager. It should have been the second episode of Discovery. I'd say it should be the second episode of Picard, but it seems like everyone on that show is drunk.
A little bit.
Most of the time.
It's how they're coping with all the depression.
Yeah. And, I mean, who knows on Lower Decks, honestly.
Well, half of everyone's drunk on Lower Decks anyway, so...
Yeah, but canonically.
Because we got some magical water here that gets everyone a little tipsy, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this episode is called Naked Now.
Mm-hmm.
The Naked Now, which is a sequel, homage, redo, soft reboot of the second episode of Star Trek the original series, The Naked Time. Yes.
And with kind of the same sort of effect going on overall, as far as, the explanation of what it is, and, there's a similar cure and all that sort of stuff. Spoilers, there's a cure.
Yeah, so I think in interest of everything, you could go back and listen to our third episode, which was The Naked Time. I wouldn't, because we didn't know what we were doing back then.
Do we know what we're doing now, Gepwin? Really?
No, but now we know what we're doing with experience.
Oh, all right. That works, actually, yeah.
Now we don't know what we're doing with experience. So, quick rundown. Enterprise shows up at a planet that is falling apart, imploding, massive gravitational shifts. They all beam down to the planet. One idiot takes off his safety equipment for some reason, touches a dead guy, and gets infected with this thing that makes him drunk. This starts spreading around the crew until everyone's being drunk. This is the very famous one where Sulu takes his shirt off and starts sword fighting in the corridors.
Yes, which, Sulu might do that sometimes anyway, but, it's more specific at this time.
And then eventually Dr. McCoy pulls a cure out of somewhere and is able to save the day at the last minute before the Enterprise is destroyed by the collapsing planet.
Yes, and then they have a time travel thing that doesn't go anywhere because the episode that was supposed to follow was delayed, so,
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. They do the time warp again.
Yes. No time warps in this one, but we do have a doctor struggling to get a cure, before everything goes crazy and everyone dies because of something. Also, I think I maybe mentioned that, previously, but McCoy probably got horribly infected. He has such a high tolerance that he's like, all right, I'm still going to keep working because that's kind of my standard modus operandi anyway.
So this one is a very direct follow-up. It was written by Gene Roddenberry, who didn't finish the teleplay, and then it was finished by D.C. Fontana. So two veterans who worked on the original episode.
Yes, and then D.C. Fontana was like, I don't like this. Could you take my name off of it?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, because the whole episode is nothing but horny time.
Yes. And people, have the gall later with Trek to be like, Star Trek has never been, about sex. No, it's had sex episodes before, and This is
Yep.
one of them.
What's kind of interesting is we'll get into it more, but kind of looking at it, they obviously wanted to do more sex stuff with the original, but given the 1960s release time, they couldn't. And in this one, they can be very explicit with it because they were doing it in the 80s.
It's like, yeah, people are having sex. We could use the word sex.
If they were doing it on the modern streaming stuff, there would have been full nudity.
Or topless Klingons and all.
Yeah, probably a lot of topless Klingons. So we've got two guest stars for this episode. Both of them are never to be seen again engineering characters, which is just that we're chock full of those in the first season, honestly.
They just had a rotating door on who's in charge of engineering there.
So we have Brooke Bundy, Chief Engineer Sarah McDougall, because we have to keep the kind of Scottish-Irish naming convention happening here.
Yes, it's a tradition. Starfleet's most famous engineers are all from Scotland in some capacity.
So Bundy started as a model in New York, moved to LA, and was known for soap opera appearances. She was on Days of Our Lives for a bit and other sitcoms. And she is probably best known to the kind of nerd ilk of film stuff as playing Parker in Nightmare on Elm Streets 3 and 4, which is way after I stopped watching those.
Yeah, they made a whole bunch of those movies there, but only some folks remember like half of them. So
yeah.
She's also on General Hospital, the band from Uncle back in the day, Fantasy Island, and the FBI.
Ooh. They have a new show called FBI.
Yeah, that's
which
weird.
I don't know if it's affiliated. And I know this only because they were filming an episode of it in my neighborhood yesterday.
Huh. That's a little weird.
So if you watch that show and you see an episode in the next season featuring a laundromat, it was possibly filmed down the street from me.
Cool. Wait, are you laundromat? FBI? Gepwin, are you a money launderer?
No, nobody launders money with the laundromat anymore. You do it with Bitcoin.
Damn.
Get with the times.
Have to get a server array or some crap. Dang, Bitcoin. I'll ruin it for everyone.
So our other guest star is Benjamin Lum, who's playing Assistant Chief Engineer Jim Shimada. He's a Hawaiian-born actor who has a decent number of scattered film and TV credits, nothing super notable that I could find. And he unfortunately did pass away in 2002.
He was in a number of sitcoms like Married with Children. He was also in Hawaii Five-0 back in the day. The late 70s. He was not in the FBI, so you don't have to worry about that. He's also in Seinfeld. Huh.
Yeah. Wait, I know I read that. Why did I not write that down?
You're more focused on The Innocent, or All American Girl, or Paradise, where he played Lee for a while. He was also in MacGyver.
Yeah. Everyone was in MacGyver, apparently.
Yes. Especially at this point in time.
I've only ever seen one episode of MacGyver. He made a bunch of gym equipment. It was very anticlimactic.
It is kind of sci-fi-ish, given some of the stuff he pulls off.
Yeah, are we going to just do some MacGyver episodes as a segue and to start into talking about Stargate?
Maybe. What was Jack up to before the Stargate program?
Yeah, they do mention a bunch of secret forces stuff that he did before the Stargate program that they never really go into.
Yes, there's maybe one or two things they kind of explicitly mention, and usually it's because here's a guy from your old days and he's angry about something, or we're hallucinating and this is a mission you were on once and it's not exactly as it actually was. So yeah,
I'm sure I'm not the first one to say that Colonel O'Neill and MacGyver are the same person.
Yes.
But it fits. We don't know what he was doing before. It's kept intentionally vague so that you don't think about the movie.
Exactly. But back to Star Trek.
Yeah, anyway, so that's it. That's the guest stars and writers. There's obviously a few more people, but those are the two main ones. We have so many background characters and things in this series that I'm going to have to really truncate.
Yes, it's like there's Guy that smiles at Tasha and important for 5 seconds.
I know, one of the cast members on here is listed as Kissing Crewman.
Yep.
Engineering woman. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're not going to go into too much details about those folks.
Nope. Anyway, that's the status quo for now. Let's jump in, see how we can parse this. Oh my god, I don't even want to get to the end of this because there's things we're going to have to talk about that I don't want to.
Yeah.
So the Enterprise is investigating the science ship Kiselev, I think. I wrote it down in Russian, and I haven't. I wrote it down in Russian, and now I'm not.
The T ship.
I think it's the Kiselev.
Independent of how it's pronounced, it's named after a famous Russian rocket scientist who, was pioneer of all sorts of cool stuff.
How do I pronounce this? Google, help. Google's not helping.
His first name's Constantine, so we could call it the Constantine.
Oh my god, that's not helpful. It's just written in Russian.
Thanks, Google.
Anyway, yes, they're investigating a science ship. It was monitoring a collapsing star, but recently sent out some very strange communications, and because also lost contact. So they contact the Enterprise while they're on their way there and start talking about pretty boys and parties before there's an exploding sound that Data identifies as an emergency hatch being blown.
That sounds like badness.
So on arrival, the away team finds the ship to be completely frozen because they've set the environmental controls so low that the space just bled in.
Yeah, this is why life support is important on spaceships. You're either going to freeze to death or melt.
Most of the crew is frozen to death and are lying on each other in various states of undress. They confirm that the bridge was fully opened to space, killing everyone there instantly. Data gets a weird pedantic moment of correcting Riker on how they all died.
Yes. Blow it out, sir. Well, it is sort of one of those things that has annoyed people that sci-fi geeks and engineers in space programs for ages. That it's like you're not being sucked out into space; you're literally being pushed by the atmosphere. And this might be a sort of moment where we're going to address that because we want our audience to learn something.
Yeah, but that's literally what any kind of suction is. So why do we even have the word?
It's a good question.
It's not like there's a distinction between the low pressure zone being set up by your vacuum cleaner that we would all agree is sucking stuff up. No one goes, I'm going to vacuum this thing and suck it up. And says, you mean blow it up?
Well, if you start using that language, though, people might think you're using your vacuum cleaner as a pipe bomb or something.
Yeah, so maybe that's why we call things sucking, and it doesn't matter.
Yes. It doesn't matter at all. Anyway.
You're moving air from a high pressure zone to a low pressure zone.
The air is what's pushing.
So anyway, while continuing to explore, Geordi goes off on his own and finds a broken shower door, and when he opens it, a fully clothed woman falls onto him.
Well, this might be a clue of some sort.
So they return to the ship, and they are fully decontaminated and checked over and quarantined in sickbay, and everyone except Geordi is fine, but he's sweating and acting strange and yelling at people.
Oh, maybe we should put him in a restraining field because he doesn't seem to be the most stable right now.
I mean, he just tell him to sit there. He's quarantined, by which I mean don't leave, please.
Did no one learn anything from the pandemic of the late American era?
We should have hit the eugenics war 10 years ago. I think we are...
Good point. we're Z-rusting too much.
Ragnar sets Data look for something that he sort of half remembers about someone, somewhere, sometime, maybe showering with their clothes on.
All right, so that's not a thing that people do sometimes due to, extreme exhaustion and, their hourly sleep, but they crawl into the shower and forgot to take their clothes off or anything like that. That ever happens.
Yeah, or people who want to be very efficient in their clothes washing.
Mm-hmm. Or folks that are doing a shampoo commercial maybe that also cleans your clothes.
Yeah, shampoo that also is detergent.
Yes. It's the future, you never know.
So Geordi wanders out of sickbay while Dr. Crusher is distracted, and they call a full manhunt, and they're bad at it.
Yes. It's like, all right, well, maybe, okay, so Geordi, yes, we're the security people, but what does this guy look like? We don't know everyone on the ship yet.
This is also one of the times, they keep having this. This is one of the times where the way that the internal tracking system on the Enterprise is wildly inconsistent.
Yes.
Because any crew member can leave their comm badge somewhere, and now they can't be tracked.
Mm-hmm.
which makes a certain amount of sense. The comm badge is how they're identifying people.
Yes.
But they can track any random guest who does not have a comm badge.
So look for someone who doesn't have a comm badge. All right, so we can eliminate the children, and this is the spouse of so-and-so. So these 3 people are the only people we have to check. Cool, all right.
So anyway, they're searching for Geordi, but he's just hanging out with Wesley, who is showing off his model tractor beam that he made for science class.
Oh, they're kind of just geeking out, I guess. There's no harm in that.
He also has a future Walkman that he's recorded a bunch of Entercom stuff onto and can make Picard say whatever he wants.
Gepwin, have the next bit of me talking here be edited into all sorts of nonsense.
That's nothing. You can't do that.
Oh, wait, I'm also editing this episode. Anyway.
Also, you're editing this episode. Yeah, you've just created a problem for yourself.
Dang it.
So Geordi leaves because he's, overheated, which is a symptom of something, probably. Mm-hmm. This is when Tasha finds him in the observation lounge where he's whining about not having normal vision. This is something they keep bringing up with him, and it's annoying.
Well, it's specifically potent this episode, and a lot of the time during TNG that just not an issue at all. But it's like this episode, we want him to have an emotional moment for reasons.
Every now and then they do it for some reason. They have it here, they have it in Insurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then, most of the time, he's just fine, getting along perfectly with a mild disability that's easy to deal with through modern technology, and then sometimes he's just like, oh my god, I shall never see like a real person.
Like, chill out, man.
So they get him back to sickbay. He's obviously not doing well, but they can't find anything wrong with him.
Well, maybe the diagnostics you're using are not the correct ones then. Maybe.
But back on the bridge, Riker finally has a flash of memory that the reference he was looking for was in a book about all of the past starships named Enterprise, which leads Data to find the Naked Time from the original series.
Oh, that's convenient. So they could just watch the episode and know what happens.
Yeah. They have complex water chains that make them drunk, and they also have the cure that McCoy came up with. So now that's done and solved and good.
Hooray!
Short
this
episode.
Is going to be easy, yeah.
Deanna comes back to her quarters to find Tasha looking at all of her clothes.
Oh, hello, Tasha. Do you break into people's quarters often?
Yeah, Deanna tries to talk her down, but she just wanders off, starts making out with random people in the hallway.
As you do.
A lot of people at the crew seem to be acting strange. The camera is really focused on her ass.
Yes. It seems that this is spread very quickly. And so it kind of suggests that, her encounter with Geordi, not the only time he encountered someone other than Wesley.
Yeah, we've really been spreading this thing.
Yes. You just say, I'm going to go everywhere and touch everybody.
So back in engineering, both the chief and assistant chief engineers are called away by the captain, but that would leave no one on duty, which is pretty convenient that Wesley just shows up and goes, hey, I could take over, and the assistant chief engineer must already have been infected by this thing, because he says, that's a good idea. I will leave a teenager in charge of one of the most important things on the ship.
Yes, here, kid, be in charge of the antimatter reactor. Don't get us all killed.
So Chief McDougal shows up on the bridge as summoned, and Picard is very confused because he didn't.
Wait a moment. Did someone try to impersonate me again? Is it a clone this time?
Just then, Picard comes on the intercom, which confuses the heck out of Picard, and announces that he's transferring command of the vessel to temporary acting captain Wesley Crusher.
Now, here's a good question. How many people actually believed this was legit on board?
I mean, anyone who was drunk, apparently.
Yes.
In engineering, Wesley has modified his tractor beam into a repulsor beam and used it to set up a force shield on the door.
Yes, and we're going to have some drunk people kind of hang out near it.
Yep, and cheer.
Yeah.
He has complete control of the ship from engineering, because it's where all the stuff on the ship is routed through.
That may be a bit of a design flaw to a degree there, that you can just take over the ship from one end of the ship compared to the other. Yeah, I don't know. It's like it's an auxiliary control all over again.
He does let Assistant Chief Shimada in to his force field because he swears loyalty to him, and he starts just playing with the computer and pulling computer chips out onto the floor.
Well, hopefully those aren't important.
Someone should maybe cover those with something.
Because they're just kind of right there, where you can just grab them whenever you feel like.
Picard wants to get the ship back under control, so he has Data find Tasha so that they can get their security back in order. Data goes to her quarters, where we have the very fully functional multiple techniques anatomically correct thing. So
yes,
that's bad. We all know why it's bad, and we're moving on.
Also, apparently, Data has gotten infected around this point as well, so he can.
Riker and McDougal are doing their best to get past Wesley's force field. Deanna shows up. She's very drunk and tries to get Riker to come with her. That he takes her to sickbay, where Crusher's distracted and he has to grab her to get her attention. And now that means that because Deanna touched Riker and Riker touched the doctor, now the doctor's infected. And she needs to keep working on a different cure because, while this is a very similar water molecule, it is slightly different, and she has to isolate a sample in order to synthesize something that will work for this new, slightly different water chain.
Yeah, so a breaking up planet produces one kind of chain. A supernova in progress will produce a different one. Got it.
Yep. But now she's infected, so she has to finish it before she gets too impaired to do anything.
No, ticking clock, sort of.
So Picard tries to talk down Wesley, but he's too impaired and also too smart because he just gets Picard to tell him what he wants him to do and then does it. He wishes to put a tractor beam on the Kislev. I think it's called Kiss. Anyway, on the other ship.
On that other ship, with everyone dead on it already.
Data's impaired now because his brain is close enough to humans for it to be affecting him, and he tries to lean on nothing because every now and then we need to be reminded that Brent Spiner was a mime.
Yes. Apparently, this was improv on set and not part of the script. But they decides, you know what? Let's keep it.
Dr. Crusher shows up on the bridge because she's getting worse and is very thirsty for Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Worf sees this.
Like the most thirsty we see Crusher for most of the series, I think.
Worf calls up Riker because he thinks the captain's infected, which is good decision making.
Yes. This whole episode, by the way, Worf is just sitting at the con and he's like, I'm not going to go anywhere and hopefully no one touches me.
Yeah, Worf just stays good the whole time.
Yeah.
He's like, this is not going well.
Yep. Well, maybe once they're all losing their minds here, I can start, stunning them or something, and then I'll be in charge of the ship. That might be fun.
So they bring Riker to the bridge. He is infected, but he's not too bad yet.
Yes.
And then the star explodes.
Oh no! We're all gonna die. Quick, warp 1, engage!
Yeah, it's sending a giant hunk of stellar matter at the ship, directly at the ship.
Oh, that's bad timing.
McDougal does get the force field down and takes back engineering, but all of those computer chips that were pulled out are vital for the engines working, so the ship has no controls.
Yes, and every single one of those chips is vital. Any individual one being out of place means they can't fly the ship at all.
Yeah. This doesn't seem like good design, but
Nope. Nope.
Would also take hours to get the chips back in place, but Wesley points out that Data could do it faster. So Riker marches him down to engineering to start replacing the chips, but according to Data, it's going to take just a couple minutes longer than they have.
Well, that sucks. Is there can we fire some thrusters or maybe open a cargo bay and blast out all the air inside to move us out of the way?
No, they won't think of that till much later.
All right. That's annoying.
So Picard makes his way down to sickbay, where he and Crusher have kind of a fun, dumb, funny exchange. I like it. It's stupid, but I like it. Crusher has the new cure to test. It works on Geordi, and they start spreading it all around the ship because now everyone's cured. In engineering, Wesley decides that if he can turn his tractor beam into a repulsor beam, he can do it with the big ship's tractor beam and push the Enterprise away from the other ship, giving them just enough time for Data to complete the computer repairs.
Oh, that's useful. Taking a page out of, I think it was Sulu's book from back in the day.
Yeah, because they used to have a button that just did this.
Yes.
Now they don't.
We only pull things towards us now.
McDougal goes, push things with the pulley beam? That's ridiculous.
Have to lay out all sorts of new circuitry. It'll take us weeks to design.
Yeah, and Wesley goes, why not just be a super competent magic child? And reroutes a bunch of things on the fly and pushes the ship into the stellar chunk, giving them the extra minute or so that they need to finish the repairs and warping out of there.
Hooray! They survived.
Riker, everything's fine at the end. They all survive. They're moving on. Riker goes, hey, it would be fair to mention that Wesley saved the ship. And Picard goes, yeah, and his science teacher.
So who's the science teacher? Should we talk to them about all this?
Yeah, because he taught him good.
And maybe some ethics of using your science experiments to,
take over the ship.
Yeah.
That's something he keeps doing.
Yeah. Sometimes by accident,
At least 3 times I can think of offhand, and there might be more. Now they're off to their next great adventure.
Yes, which, oddly enough, is worse than this one. But we'll talk about that next episode.
Yeah, so much worse. So much worse.
But yeah, so The Naked Time. It's certainly an episode of Star Trek.
Yeah. So we should get this out of the way. This is the exact same criticism that we had with the first one.
Mm-hmm.
This is too early in the season.
Yes, we don't know who these people are, so them acting drunk, we don't know how this changes their normal behavior.
Yeah. Now, since I didn't watch this, I was too young to really watch Next Generation as it aired, so I came to it when it was being serialized. I came to it when it was on just randomly, so I saw all the episodes really out of order. By the time I saw this, I already knew who all these characters were, so it kind of did make sense. But this, we've seen them show up once. Geordi has had maybe 15 minutes of screen time at this point altogether.
Yeah, here's Geordi on the Farpoint station, kind of meandering around, and here's Geordi looking at something, and that's kind of it on the first pilot episode there. Well, here he's like, I'm going to be more of a main character, but no one knows who I am. Maybe I am really upset about not being able to see sunsets all the time, and people are just sick of it by this point.
Yeah, they go, and at the first bit, Geordi comes in, he's yelling at people, he's sweating, he's being weird, and Riker goes, Geordi, you're not acting like yourself. It's like, how would we know that?
Yes. So maybe they should have done some more of that showing and not just telling us for this one here, and put it later in the season at the very least.
Yeah, wait, that's a thing? You can show but not tell?
Yeah, sometimes it is important to tell as well, but there is a time for each of these techniques, and to know when each one is ideal for your situation is part of being a good writer. And that didn't happen here.
Now, what's kind of infuriating is you could, one, put this slightly late. I will say they had a chance here because they spent a good half of the episode doing other stuff before the infection completely took over.
Mm-hmm.
They do have time to get a little bit of characterization and stuff in there, and we get a little bit of a sense of how things work before this infection starts. So they had a chance to do that, and it's kind of infuriating in both of these episodes because this is a really good opportunity early in the season. I see why they wanted to do it early, even though they shouldn't do it this early. They should give you a couple episodes to get the characters down.
Indeed.
But you could do this very early because this is a really good chance to show underlying problems and motivations.
Indeed. Yeah. This, we see their highly competent moments, their, I am totally on top of my game moments. And then you have an episode like this coming later where it's like, but this is still, they still are people underneath. They have these quirks, they have these problems, they have this past trauma that they're still trying to work through. And perhaps part of them seeking to be the most competent crew in the fleet is part of them trying to work through these issues. But we don't really have it in the right order here.
We don't have it in the right order. And then what actually are the issues that were being shown? Wesley wants more power. That's like a constant thread through him. He wants to be able to do Starfleet bridge stuff, and then eventually he does. That's not much of a surprise. That's his entire character, and it was already set up as his entire character.
Yes.
Dr. Crusher is horny. That doesn't really come up much until you get to like Sub Rosa.
Yes. Also, how attached when the simmering interest between her and Picard kind of becomes obvious to both of them.
Yeah.
And that's like season 6 or 7.
Let's see. You get Geordi's thing with his vision, which also doesn't come up again until like Insurrection. And then also you have Tasha is horny.
And has a tragic past.
Which is so not the way to talk about your tragic past.
Yeah. So now it's time for some backstory for Tasha Yar. She comes from, I've heard it described as Planet Mad Max. It's a colony that was set up and then just kind of let to fall apart. And so they got, big buildings and, extensive population, but it's complete anarchy. And so they have on this planet the one of the big forces of terror upon people is rape gangs. Yeah, and she's kind of bringing this up in the context of, hey, Data, do you want to make out?
Yeah. I'm going to talk about how I avoided horrible sexual assault through my entire childhood, and now all I want is like a nice, sensitive man.
Which, Data's probably, the safest person you can go for that. But it's also a bizarre writing choice to link these two so obviously here.
Yeah. One, rape gang is never a word you should be employing in this context at all, ever. And it's definitely not something that you should be bringing up that a character had to deal with right before they're going to seduce the android.
An android who is becoming, quite obviously impaired himself. And sure, she is too, but there's definitely some consent issues here that are quite questionable.
Yeah, these weird things. And then these things like the Mad Max planet and any of these stuff that you're shown in some of these, they really still want to get their like weird, grim, dark stuff into Star Trek for some reason. Just doesn't work. It just doesn't work with what we've set up as like the Federation came in and rescued her from this planet and then just left it to rot.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense. And especially, we'll get to it later, but later on when we actually encounter this planet, it still makes even less sense.
It's like weird factions, and there's like things that let you know where people are, kind of, and there's other things that they're doing here. And it's just all sorts of weird and oddly structured to be perpetually just awful for everyone for no reason.
So Tasha's entire thing with that, awful, horribly handled, also makes no sense. We didn't get a single other character's motivation. We kind of have the thing that they drop really quickly about how Deanna still wants to sleep with Riker. Mm-hmm. But they drop that really quick. Like, see, it's too early to set up even the character motivations because you just haven't had enough time to solidify what you want your show to be.
Yes. So having this episode at this point, big misstep. Some of the folks that worked on it, the actors were like, yeah, that episode kind of sucked. Though some of them kind of like down the road is like, oh, that wasn't so bad. But it's also very much because they now know what their character is about at that point. So it's like, all right, it kind of makes more sense now. But, contemporary accounts, yeah, it's like,
See, I feel like you ran into a problem because, like, as bad as Naked Time was, the restrictions that they had on what people would do while drunk led to some really weird, funny things, like Sulu sword fighting, which never really comes up again.
Yes.
And they were trying to introduce the arc that they wound up focusing on later with Spock and his struggle between his like human side with emotions and his Vulcan side that has to control emotions. Mm-hmm. They didn't do it good, but they tried to set it up. And then they also had some stuff of, this is Kirk's command style when he loses control of the ship, which is to just go ape shit on everyone.
Yeah. I'm going to be a little unhinged here. Don't mind me. Now follow my orders, but otherwise I have to freak out.
But trying to update that into the 80s, I feel like this is people who saw that and were like, oh, the restrictions of the time. Now in the enlightened 1980s, when we get to talk about sexuality, we can just make everyone have sex, like you would when you're at a drunken frat party.
And so we're going to have our naked people explicitly, but they're all frozen because it's still the 80s. And then we're going to have lots of implied sex, and we're going to even have people making out in the hallways, scandalous and stuff. And so, we'll get all our horniness out, and everyone will be fine with it. To a certain extent, I do appreciate media being happy and open to talk about sex and have it be part of what's going on in the world. But there's a certain level of maturity you kind of need at the same time, which this episode kind of doesn't have. It's like okay, write me an episode of Star Trek, and you're asking like a 13-year-old who is like, I want to write it's all sorts of wild and there's going to be sex and I'm going to show my parents up sort of stuff here. It's like maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Yeah, this wasn't a good idea at all.
Yeah. So I would love to have an episode of Star Trek at some point that talks sincerely about relationships and people being generally cool with sex in the future and all that sort of stuff. Are we going to get one of those? Get one?
Well, Lower Decks is pushing that direction weirdly.
Yeah, I think Lower Decks is pushing that avenue pretty well there. Oftentimes it's played for laughs, but still sort of this is part of life in this future that we have, and it's all cool.
So there's two other things with this episode. I'm going to bring up the lighter one first.
Go for it.
I think it's very interesting. This episode was made in 1987, which is about 4 years before the fall of the Soviet Union, give or take.
So where did this the other ship, this Kolsky place, Konstantine's ship, where was it built?
Yeah, it was built in the USSR.
Yes.
It has a plaque on it that says it was constructed in the Soviet Union, which they don't draw a lot of attention to. They don't go into a lot of Earth history in this thing, but this heavily suggests a very interesting thing that is almost never touched on in any other science fiction, that they achieved a united world, full world peace, an interstellar peacekeeping force and union of planets, all while the Soviet Union maintained its own structure. Like the Soviet Union not only maintained into the present day, but still exists and is part of a united planet.
Yes. It's like, Wyoming, except it's the Soviet Union.
And also, given the way that they treat money in this show, or the way that they say they do, apparently what they did was kick out the Russian dictators, reform the government out of its weird quasi-fascism thing into actual communism, and then spread that all around the world.
Yep. Maybe that was the eventual fallout of the eugenic wars in World War III, that the Soviet Union slowly formed itself on one, and then took over the world on the other, and that's how the Vulcans sort of found us at that point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They dropped it since, because the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, and then it didn't make sense to write stories about it anymore. But as an alternate future thing, I want to get this very clear, because I've had so many arguments with actual, literal, working economists on this point. The Soviet Union did not and never did practice communism.
Yes, it did not.
They practiced communism just as much as the Nazis practiced socialism.
Okay, not really. It's like, all right, so you basically have a new name slapped on your corporations, and there's still people running them, singular people who sort of treat it as their own fiefdom, and they interact and trade amongst each other. And wait, how is this not corporatism, just under a different name?
Yeah, it's some, well, I mean, it's some sort of fascism given the dictatorial control that the Russian state had.
Yeah, you know, all these people are then, you know, part of the central committee of the party.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And there's I have seen a lot of economic debate whether fascism itself counts as its own economic system, because it tends to sort of take over and incorporate the existing economic system in
like
some very weird and unique ways. But I'd say that this was some sort of odd mix between corporatism and palacism, which is a very old Bronze Age economic system in which the state, all the decision making and funds and money spending decisions were channeled through a state enterprise, which is mostly what people associate communism with now after the Soviet Union, is the state owning everything, where in fact that's the exact opposite of traditional views on communism.
Yeah, the actual communism is, you know, it's like, all right, so there might be a state for a little while, but we're trying to sort of devolve power to the people as much as possible. And so then people are the ones that are in control of, you know, the means of production and all that. Not
the whole workers control the means of production thing that Marxists love to yell about. Yeah.
As opposed to, you know, Mr. Party man who is in charge of the factory, you know, and making all decisions for us. That's not communism.
Yeah. I have a friend who works with high name economists. I've never met one of the high big name economists, but I've had interacted with people he knows who are literally working in this field who don't seem to know what communism is.
Yes.
It's very depressing.
It's like, come on, people, read a book. It doesn't have to be Marx. It could be, you know, something related.
And I think that there are some legitimate criticisms you could have of Marx's theories and economic ideas, but these are not them.
Yes. If you don't know what his ideas even are, it's hard to actually have a critique of them. So, you know.
So anyway, apparently Star Trek Future, Soviet Union still exists and apparently was able to reform into actual communism, and that's what they're using now.
Yes. It's like, wait, this Federation thing can have us be real communists? Hooray! We'll be the USSR forever and a day. I will say, though, that there is another science fiction TV show that does mention the eventual fate of Russia explicitly, despite a unified Earth situation. And that's Babylon 5.
I thought that's where that was going.
With the Russian Federation, which is where the character Susan Ivanova is from. That, you know, it's a, you know, there's a united Earth, and there is apparently still a Russia, it's, I guess it's called the Russia Consortium at that point. And they still talk about things, like, I'm against imperialism and I don't want Russia trying to do that. So being part of the Earth Alliance, it's A-okay with me. Yeah. What else you got?
Yeah. I'm sorry. First off, I'm sorry to everyone. I know we're all sick of this. Star Trek keeps bringing these things up, though. Quarantine and containment. I think this shows, one, we can look at the different ways that they handled these situations, because on this one, nobody broke their weird containment thing. Like, they didn't go into containment when they beamed over to the other ship. I'm not sure why they did in the first episode. They'd never really mentioned why they're in full quarantine suits when they beam down to the planet, but they are, except for the one dude chooses to take his off for no reason.
Yes.
Then nobody mentions it. Nobody thinks about it. They don't check them for anything when they come back. They don't quarantine them at all.
Mm-hmm.
This one, they bring them back. They decontaminate them. They say full decontamination. They trust their decontamination protocols a little much, I think, is their main problem.
Yes.
And then they quarantine. And I think this really demonstrates the dangers of the half-hearted half measures that you can take with these things, because they quarantine Geordi by saying, please sit here and don't move.
Yeah, this is a voluntary quarantine,
which is kind of a way that we handle some of these things in real life. But I'm not saying you always have to have a big full-on forced quarantine, but you do have to realize that the people who are not particularly good at making rational, informed, thought-out decisions are scared, sick people.
Yes. And so sometimes having some more concrete measures to, discourage scared sick people from taking horrible decisions, might be necessary in order to not spread a deadly contagion around.
Yeah. So you could have had some, like you saw that he was impaired. You could have done something you could have locked the door.
Yes.
Anything to keep him from just wandering away.
But no.
But you didn't. So,
like, Voyager, it has lots of sort of weird stuff at times, but they were actually generally pretty smart about having the part of sickbay with the containment field. That, all right, someone is having a horrible thing happen, and we can't let them infect the rest of the ship, so we're going to put them in this corner of sickbay and put up a force field around them, and then they might, be fine, and then it's not necessary. But there might also be times where they get up and try to kill everybody, but they're stopped because of the force field. So, so maybe this particular adventure was what taught them. It's like, we might be, very prideful folks here about our technology and how we sort of handle things here. But maybe having a part of sickbay we could just sort of put a force field around would be a smart idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it does show there's a fine line to have here, because you have to value someone's personal autonomy. But you can see you have like, oh, it's one person. What's the big deal? Maybe we don't have to worry about it. The ship almost gets destroyed.
Yep. And this is also after they basically got good evidence that the people on the other ship all got themselves killed because of something. This is something, so you should probably assume the worst, that this is the same something.
So yeah, let's not, half-hearted quarantine measures, they get you into trouble, and we know this, and we keep seeing this, but we keep doing it.
Yeah, just look outside, and, at the U.S., we hit another of those horrible death tolls from COVID.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's right around when us here in New York decided that we don't need to wear masks inside anymore.
Oh dear. So this sucks. I'm going to keep wearing my mask though, just so you know.
Yeah, me too.
I got a cool one. It's like a skull thing, but it's like green, and it's like all sorts of monstrous, and so it's like I am like a spooky guy from beyond
one of those,
nightmares and things like that.
Yeah, yes. One of those ones that keeps people away from you because they think you're weird. I'm like, yes. I'm gonna be over here.
Now, my other option was Godzilla.
I know a couple of people who got comedy masks that just have funny phrases or make fun of stuff. And they say that they like it, but every now and then someone runs up to them and goes, "Oh my God, I love your mask." It's like, thank you. Can you love it from over there?
Yes, you could read it from over there. Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. So
anyway, that was depressing.
Yeah, that was rather grim there. I didn't have much else to talk about. I already talked about sex positivity and how this kind of fails on that. So yeah, I'm pretty good.
Hey, in that case, we should move on, like we always do, from depressing to the galaxy's favorite game show!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Galaxy's favorite game show. I hope you're all having a wonderful time this evening, or morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. We got a trio of prizes to hand out because our crew's been getting a few points here. The first one is the Horrific Orgy Accident prize, which goes out to the crew of the Zyalskosky, the other ship there, for getting themselves all killed while having their lots of fun there. Gipun, what do they win?
They win. You've drunk enough that your speech is all slurry, so it doesn't matter if you can't pronounce Zyalskosky.
I like that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Our second prize is the Medical Malpractice prize, which kind of goes to everyone on board the Enterprise for being very bad at containing an outbreak of this drunk stuff here, because you can kind of see it coming because everyone's like listing their head from side to side and all that. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win those force field belts that they used in like 2 episodes of the animated series. It seems like you could just give someone that and let them go on about their day, because then they're contained.
Yeah, it's like, I have a full isolated environment within here. Yeah, I just can't, like, go out and hug people. But, well, maybe that's the problem. They would try to do that. Anyway, our last prize is, the Dr. Love Prize, which goes to Crusher for being a doctor and coming on a little strong with Picard. I kind of ran out of ideas as far as awards this week, so that's what we got. What does she win, Gepwood?
Crusher wins the full set of McCoy's alcohol cabinet, because she's fun drunk. Yep. And also, they were so worried that they couldn't have the kind of Kirk-McCoy relationship that they wanted between the Doctor and Captain as confidant and things, and this is just so much better.
Yep. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you the googly eyes and be all, like, hot and bothered here. What's up, Picard? And Picard's like, hey, Bev, I'm going to awkwardly stand here with my elbow on the door frame here, and we're going to have a little talk. Please go away before I do something horrible.
I know, this episode is so bad, but some of it is in such a good way.
So I guess maybe watch this episode if you're already drunk?
Yeah.
All right.
Take a shot every time they do something stupid.
Speaking of taking us things, maybe I'm drunk. I don't drink. That's weird. Take us away, Gepwood.
Yes, thank you all for indulging our nice palate cleanser thingy at the end of the episode that we forced you to listen to, called The Galaxy's Favorite Game Show!
So, Gepwood, did you notice that Riker was, like, the least impaired through all that?
Yeah, like, he gets it, he doesn't really get impaired, and then at the end he starts to get a little sweaty. He's like, no, I can't. He's very self-aware, which is interesting. So
maybe, he's a bigger guy, so maybe there's that kind of factoring in there. Alternatively, this is maybe to imply that he just has a lot of practice being sort of impaired like this.
Maybe Riker might be the party man.
Well, he is kind of the Kirk replacement to a certain degree.
Yeah, which is fun.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But yes.
This episode wasn't great, but it's better than the next one.
Yes. That's why I'm delaying talking about the next one.
So next episode is famous for being just bad. Every actor in the show agrees it's bad. Everyone thinks it's bad. Everyone's just bad. It's all bad.
Yep. It's an episode where they go to a planet of hats.
Yeah. The particular hat is racism.
Yes, and then some racism happens, and then it gets resolved. Not really, actually, but
I'm not exactly looking forward to this episode, but it's kind of an interesting one to look at because yes, it's very racist, but it's very racist in some odd and specific ways that are kind of interesting to examine.
It's like the 1940s just sort of popped its head up for some reason.
Yeah, and some of it, I mean, we're going to get into it, but some of it is mostly racist purely because of casting decisions.
And we'll get into that there. And it also kind of begs the question of why is this the only planet that's like dominated by non-white people in all of Star Trek?
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. So next week, we're going to talk about some very uncomfortable things for two white dudes in Code of Honor.
Code of Honor. Oh, no. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow. Oh, no. Oh, no. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.